Hi everyone in English 1301, it's Dr. E and I'm here with your weekly instructional video. Just a few things before we get into our content module for the week. Just a reminder to check the announcements. I had some reminders here regarding the journal submission, the week 3 video that was, in week 3. So don't forget to check on the announcements area every time you log in just to double check. All right, heading over to the content area, let's take a look at our week 4 module. It looks like an intense week just based on all the reading that we have, but it's a little bit deceptive, right? Because we actually don't have a lot in terms of assignments, and the readings are pretty straightforward, right? So you don't have to kind of, sludge your way through it. So we have a chapter on moving from what your sources say to what you say, right? So it's about taking that knowledge, taking the ideas from sources that you're planning to utilize after, distinguishing between facts and misinformation from our previous week, right? And then how do we then kind of, utilize those ideas in our own, right? In our own writing. And then we have a chapter on quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing, right? We want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to properly document those sources, to quote them properly, to make the choice between quoting and paraphrasing. I always just encourage folks, just quote, paraphrasing is great. But oftentimes I find that paraphrasing can be a little bit confusing when it comes to, you know, how to properly document those ideas. So I feel like quoting is just really straightforward. Anyhow, this chapter, our editors go through really, good ideas and details about how to do this ethically, how to utilize our research ethically. And that also flows into giving credit and avoiding plagiarism, which is really important when we get to our final reading this week. This is an article by Amy Choi. It's entitled What Americans Can Learn from Other Food Cultures. So again, taking our ideas about writing and research and everything, and then kind of applying it to our overall topic, our theme of food, right? Choi does a really great job of utilizing sources. She uses a lot of sources. The problem with this can be, okay, we want to use Choi's work to support our own ideas, but she's quoting all these different people, she's paraphrasing people. So we have to be incredibly careful when utilizing her work to ensure we are giving credit to the proper sources. So quoting Choi directly is, fairly straightforward. It's what we do, right? But what happens when she's quoting somebody else's idea that we find really useful in our own work? That's called an indirect source. I will get into more detail about how to do this properly with MLA in this MLA video. I just really want you to keep in mind everything, we've read this week before getting to this final article, and being very careful about crediting the right people for their paraphrased or quoted ideas. So you're watching the weekly video. I also have a multimedia project video I'd like you to watch. It is not due this week. What I want you to do is start planning, because if you look at our schedule, it seems like a slow week this week, but it's because next week there's a lot going on, right? Because we are heading into essentially the final full week of our course. If you can believe it, it's moving quickly, right? So I really want you to start planning, and some of you, if you want to, even starting your project. But that means you have to understand the project, the guidelines. So make sure you're watching the video. There are several different examples in the videos, so that that can kind of get your ideas going. It's essentially about taking an idea from our course related to food and making something creative out of that idea. Okay, and then the MLA video is just helping us really fine tune all the ins and outs of MLA, because MLA is not simple and straightforward sometimes. It's so particular. It's very persnickety. It's very picky about how information is shared in academic writing. So I hope this video helps, just kind of outline the main ideas. Excuse me. You are not meant to be an expert in MLA. What you are meant to be is a person who knows where to go to find the answers you need about MLA, right? So that's in this video, but also we have our whole MLA help module. And so it has, various links and bits of information. It has citations. It has all this kind of stuff. So make sure you know where to go to find the answers you need when it comes to MLA. So just take some time to review the food journal guidelines. We don't have a food journal due this week, but again, looking ahead to next week, we are going to be working on our collection and our multimedia project. So you can always take a look at the syllabus schedule and rubrics area. If you take a peek ahead at next week and think, oh my gosh, what are all of these things? Everything is outlined here. There are videos for all of it. Don't panic, right? This week is kind of a way to get our ducks in a row because we do have a discussion post and a quiz, right? So we don't have any of those additional assignments that we need to worry about, but it is because next week is pretty intensive. So think ahead, work ahead. There's also the opportunity this week to consider bonus credit assignments. Please note that I don't round up grades, and it's because there are, a few opportunities within our assignments to earn bonus credit, but then there are also just overall bonus credit assignments. So if you scroll up and go to our course activities tab and take a look at assignments. Oh, it's not visible. Let me pause. Right, apologies. So if you go there, you'll see that there is a bonus credit folder. If you click on that, it gives you some basic details, right? But you can also go to the content area. And because bonus credit is a part of student success, just take a look at the student success module, bonus events, workshops. And remember, again, we have our wonderful tutor, Michael, here. So if you have any questions or concerns, especially looking ahead to next week, make an appointment. He's definitely there to help out. Okay, so our discussion post this week. So we have everything. You're watching what will be the first one here. And then all of the, additional help. I also included a link directly to our book because if you scroll up, you should always be able to access your book here. But I thought this just might offer some additional ease to, all the ins and outs of navigating D2L. So our week 4 discussion is taking choice article, which is notorious for being a doozy when it comes to crediting folks, and writing something about that, right? So it's... Academic writing is multifaceted, right? And every course you take that requires writing is going to be a little bit different. In a perfect world, you're going to have professors that tell you the expectations in each different kinds of class for each different kind of writing. But the basics of it with academic writing is typically taking sources to help support our own ideas. And for most classes, you're not going to be using like the first person and your own personal experiences. That is what's required in this specific course, right? So it's just, you have to figure things out, right? And MLA specifically can be really problematic and difficult with figuring those things out. And in other classes, you'll have something like APA or Chicago style or Turabian or all the different formatting styles. But once you understand one, you kind of get a sense of, okay, I know I have to do this in MLA, so I need to figure out how I'm supposed to do this particular thing in APA, etc. So for this week's post, I want you to consider choice article as we think about properly documenting our sources, as we think about quoting properly, paraphrasing if we need to, which again, just especially for this assignment, I would avoid, but figuring out how she's paraphrasing ideas, all of that. So she breaks cultural identities and foods into different categories, right? And this is something you'll see in her article. She separated her ideas in this way, which makes it really easy and approachable. I want you to choose one of those categories that really resonates with you and write 2 to 3 paragraphs about your own food culture. Now you may be looking and thinking, well, I don't really have a food culture. We all do. It's just a part of who we are in whatever kind of family structure we were raised in, our guardians, our parents, our aunts and uncles, whoever we are around, even our work family or folks at school have impact on what we would consider our own food culture and the choices we make when it comes to food, whether we have a great relationship with food or not, right? So for each paragraph, I want you to choose at least one quote from Choi's work to properly cite. Again, please be careful. This is one of those times when it's really straightforward and easy to identify when perhaps AI has been used to help along the way, because AI cannot figure out how to credit anybody's ideas properly in Choi's work. So please be careful. If you need to use AI to help revise and edit, that's one thing, right? But it's another thing to push AI to do all the work, right? We're talking about ethically writing and researching and, completing our academic work. So don't feel overwhelmed by this kind of assignment. Again, sometimes submitting something is better than submitting nothing, and there's no expectation of perfection. However, there is the expectation of some revisions and edits and making sure our ideas are effectively communicated, right? So that's a lot. So I've just dropped a lot of information and my ideas were meandering. So if you have any questions or concerns about this, please let me know. But really, our goal is to take all the ideas that we've read related to utilizing sources and properly documenting those, and incorporate what we've learned into our own piece of writing that happens to relate to food. And Choi gives us a really good jumping off point for that. Because, think back on, it'll make a lot of sense when you read her article, right? Because she's breaking all these ideas down into just different categories that can be really approachable. So just choose one and write about that one. Start a new thread. Make sure that you utilize your name as the subject line and chosen pronouns if you prefer. And then going back to week 4, this week's quiz is worth quite a bit because we have a lot of reading. So we have a lot of ground to cover. Just make sure that you are doing all that reading and work beforehand. And it's based on all the assignments, right? So of course you can take the quiz multiple times to get the best possible grade, but why put more work on yourself? If you do all the work before starting that quiz, I think it's going to be a lot, you'll be a lot more successful. Oh, dog's drinking in the background. So again, it looks like a pretty straightforward week. It does look reading intensive, although the chapters aren't super long, but they're really helpful. I think the editors have done a really great job of making the ideas approachable. But what I really want you to do is take a look at next week and all that we have going on and kind of seeing how you can get a jump on some of your ideas. And that's why we're watching the multimedia project video, because that is something I would really love you to start getting moving forward on. Please let me know if you have any questions or concerns. You can reach out to me via email, set up a time to chat. You can text using Google Voice, all the things. Or you can, of course, post in that Q&A discussion board if you have any questions or concerns, or if you just have a quick question about, a project idea, whatever the case may be. I'm here for you. Let me know what you need, and good luck this week.